Hello, I'm your friend Teacher Sam. Have you ever felt like your English conversations were missing a little something? Maybe you feel like you're repeating the same phrases over and over again. Or perhaps you just want to express yourself with more confidence and clarity. Well, you're in the right place. In this video, I'm going to share with you 10 English phrases that will instantly make you sound smarter. We're not just talking about big, complicated words here. These are phrases that are commonly used by native English speakers, and they can easily be incorporated into your own vocabulary. Whether you're chatting with friends, giving a presentation at work, or just trying to impress someone special, these phrases will help you communicate more effectively and sound more sophisticated. So, let's dive in and unlock the power of language together. Our first phrase is "in light of." Now you might be thinking, Sam, that sounds pretty basic, but trust me, this phrase is a powerhouse when it comes to sounding intelligent. In light of essentially means because of or considering. It's a way to introduce a reason or explanation for something. For example, you might say, in light of the recent heat wave, we've decided to postpone our picnic. Using "in light of" adds a touch of formality and sophistication to your language. It shows that you're considering different factors and making informed decisions. Plus, it just sounds really smart. So next time you're tempted to say "because of," try swapping it out for "in light of" and see the difference it makes. Let's move on to our next phrase. To put it succinctly. This one's a real gem, especially if you tend to ramble on like I sometimes do. To put it succinctly means to summarize something in a clear and concise way. It's like saying, here's the short version. For instance, imagine you're telling a friend about a complicated movie plot. You could say, to put it succinctly, the robots tried to take over the world, but a group of brave scientists stopped them. See? You've summed up the entire plot in just a few words. This phrase is particularly useful in professional settings or when you're trying to make a point quickly and effectively. It shows that you value your listeners' time and that you're able to distill complex information into easily digestible chunks. That's the mark of a true communicator. Our next phrase is all about perspective. In the grand scheme of things is a beautiful way to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. It helps to put things into context and remind ourselves that not everything is as important as it might seem in the moment. For example, imagine you're feeling stressed about a work deadline. You could say to yourself, in the grand scheme of things, this deadline isn't the end of the world. My health and happiness are far more important. See how that shifts your perspective? Suddenly that deadline doesn't seem quite as daunting. This phrase is a powerful tool for managing stress, staying grounded, and making wise decisions. It encourages us to think beyond the immediate and consider the long-term implications of our actions. Our fourth phrase is, it stands to reason. This phrase, it stands to reason, is all about logic and deduction. It's a way of saying that something is a natural or logical conclusion based on the available evidence. For instance, you might say, it stands to reason that if you practice playing the piano every day, you'll eventually become quite good at it. See how that just makes sense? This phrase adds a touch of intellectual weight to your arguments. It shows that you're not just making random statements, but that you're thinking critically and drawing logical connections between ideas. Number 5 phrase is, by and large. Let's move on to by and large, a phrase that's as versatile as it is elegant. By and large essentially means generally or for the most part. It's a great way to make a generalization without being too absolute. For example, you might say, by and large people are inherently good. Now you might encounter the occasional bad apple, but this phrase acknowledges that goodness is a common human trait. It's a subtle but important distinction. Using by and large adds a touch of nuance to your language. It shows that you're aware of exceptions and that you're not trying to oversimplify complex issues. Number 6 phrase is, for all intents and purposes. This phrase is a bit of a mouthful, but it's worth adding to your vocabulary, for all intents and purposes. We use this phrase to say that something is practically the same as something else, even if it's not exactly the same. For example, you might say, for all intents and purposes, this vintage watch is just as good as new. It might have a few tiny scratches, but they're barely noticeable. This phrase is especially useful when you're talking about things that are functionally equivalent. It allows you to acknowledge minor differences while still emphasizing the overall similarity. In a nutshell, is phrase number 7. This phrase is a personal favorite of mine, especially when I'm trying to get to the point quickly. In a nutshell is another way of saying in short or to summarize. It's a signal to your listener that you're about to deliver the most important information in a concise and digestible way. For example, you might say, in a nutshell, the company's new strategy is to focus on online sales. Boom! You've just conveyed the essence of a potentially complex business decision in just a few words. This phrase is a lifesaver when you're short on time or when you're talking to someone who appreciates brevity. It shows that you respect their time and that you're able to cut to the chase. Phrase number 8 is, to that end. To that end is a very good phrase to use in daily plans, goals, and solutions. This phrase is all about purpose and intention. It's a way of saying for that reason or in order to achieve that goal. For instance, you might say, we want to reduce our carbon footprint. To that end, we're switching to renewable energy sources. See how that connects the goal of reducing their carbon footprint with the action of switching to renewable energy? This phrase is particularly useful when you're talking about goals, plans, or solutions. It helps you to clearly articulate the relationship between your objectives and the steps you're taking to achieve them. Number 9 phrase is, be that as it may. Let's talk about be that as it may. This phrase is a masterclass in diplomacy. It's a way of acknowledging someone else's point of view while still expressing your own, even if it differs. For example, you might say, I understand that you're concerned about the cost of this project. Be that as it may, I believe the potential benefits outweigh the risks. See how that acknowledges the other person's concerns without dismissing them entirely? This phrase is incredibly useful in negotiations, debates, or any situation where you need to find common ground with someone who has a different perspective. It shows that you're willing to listen and consider other viewpoints, even if you don't agree with them. Phrase number 10 is, with that said. And finally, we come to our last phrase, with that said. This one's a great way to transition to a new point or conclusion, especially if it contrasts slightly with what you've just said. It's like saying, now that I've presented that information, let's move on to something else. For instance, you might say, the data clearly shows that sales have increased. With that said, we need to be cautious about reading too much into short-term trends. See how that acknowledges the positive sales figures while also urging caution? This phrase is a valuable tool for adding nuance and balance to your arguments. It shows that you're considering different angles and that you're not afraid to present a balanced perspective. Conclusion: level up your language. So there you have it. 10 English phrases that will instantly make you sound smarter. Remember, language is a powerful tool, and even small changes to your vocabulary can have a big impact on how you're perceived. By incorporating these phrases into your conversations and writing, you'll not only sound more intelligent, but you'll also be able to express yourself with greater clarity, precision, and sophistication. Now I'm curious, which of these phrases are you most excited to start using? Drop a comment below and let me know. And be sure to subscribe to my channel for more language tips and tricks. Until next time, happy speaking.